morning, everybody. Hope everyone's doing well. So I'm going to start really quickly because we're running behind time, and I just want to make sure that we get to actually the reason a lot of us are in this room, which is ultimately about Malaysia. We started. Hisham gave a talk about how things that happen with the Federal Reserve and with our China and so on impacts what happens here, and the Plaza Accord. Which saw a lot of Japanese investment in Malaysia. We saw our growth in the early 90s to be about 9+%, with 40% of investment to GDP. Now our investment to GDP is about 20%. So at 40%, most of it was actually in real estate in Malaysia. And in part, and I'm not knocking real estate, I'm just saying it as a matter of fact, where our economy was driven by E&E expansion, electronics and electrical and electronics, in the 80s and starting in the 70s, it then moved away towards more real estate. And I think, we do know that real estate is a significant contributor to our economy, but it is part of Malaysia's premature deindustrialization as well. But now, and Hisham mentioned and earlier as well, during speeches when Sophian talked about how, the bricklaying, from like centuries ago, and bricklaying today is the same, productivity doesn't change. And even earlier in the previous session, we heard about actually macro trends that impact Malaysia, the way we think about it. Charlie brought up about how we should think about data and how to use some of it to be a bit more predictive. I guess the question now comes to then us, right? So everybody has set the stage for what's going on internationally. And so now we're going to focus on Malaysia, right? So to do this today, I'm not going to go through the introductions, right? Because, well, I guess everybody can read them. And also, just want to make sure we spend more time discussing. I'm going to go through a very first question to everybody, just very quickly. And I didn't really, to the audience, this is prepared, but I didn't really give them a lot of time because I sent this late last night. If you could share, just to start off the discussion, given the kind of mega trends we see today globally, what is one reason for optimism that you have about the Malaysian real estate sector, and what is one reason for pessimism? So let me start first on my immediate left. Samuel, CEO of Olive Tree Property Consultants. Go ahead, Samuel. And by the way, for the benefit of the crowd, I've already told the panelists, if anybody takes a bit too long, I will cut them off. So I will be very disciplined on this. So please go ahead.
I think the important thing, if you look over the last 5 years, with the tension between US and China, things have started to shift over to Malaysia and the ASEAN country. Now, having seen what is going on in the investment, now I just pick up some statistics on FDI. Q1 itself, we attracted about 83.7 billion. Of which 56% are from the foreign investors. This speaks very well. Now, if you read today's article, for the first half of this year, the amount of investment from investor overseas has also gone up. Now, why are this happening? One of this is because Malaysia has remained a neutral country, friendly to both China and the Western country, and this makes us very attractive to them. Of course, the ecosystem in Malaysia has been very conducive for investors to come in. Our environment, our climax, our infrastructure, our legal framework, our food is very important. The multicultural facet of Malaysia are all attraction. Of course, our land costs, labor costs, and skill are all factors that come in together. Now, I just speak on the economy. The later part of it, I will just dwell a little bit on the property real estate sector, why they are coming into Malaysia. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Samuel. Now, next, Puan Norani, who is CIO of Pelaburan Hartanah, Berhad.
Hello, good morning, everyone. I'm optimistic, Nick, about the growth sector in property, healthcare, education, and the darlings of today, industrial, logistic, data center. I'm pessimistic about the office sector, but I do hope, as a stakeholder, all in this room, we can do something so that we can alleviate the pessimism about the office sector.
Maybe can I just go in a little bit further. When you say office sector, what is it specifically that you're pessimistic about for the office? Is it because of COVID, now people work from home, they don't want to go back to the office anymore? There's so much traffic jam. Okay, we wait for government to reduce subsidies, then nobody wants to drive anymore. But can I just press you a bit more on that?
Yes, Nick. In terms of the average vacancy in KL, Greater KL is about now 28%. And that has been hovering around the 30%, 29%, 28%. So it seems like there's no improvement into the subsector of office. But I do see a slight positive trend where in the last 12 months, out of 100% of listing activities, 24% is relocation of tenants to better office, 26% downsizing, but 50% is a combination of expansion, tenant relocate and expand, as well as new setup. So that is a good thing to see, but I think we should probably in the market, in the industry, we have a committee where we can address this properly.
Great, thank you very much. By the way, questions are very welcome, and I don't really like this thing where we let everybody talk and then only we get people involved later. So along the way, as questions come in, I will ask people to address it live just because to have a little bit of a change in flow, yeah? So please send questions in. Finally, we have Leong Meng, who is Director of Origination and Listing Division of Bursa. So your positive and negative views on Malaysian real estate.
Yeah, good morning. Maybe I share a bit of personal passion. My passion lies largely in the sustainability space. I'm a bit saddened to see that it ranks at 26% in the poll today. But there's always light at the end of the tunnel. I'm pretty optimistic in the real estate space in regards to the sustainability space, primarily because the inertia to move away from quick profits is large. And we do see that there are leadership among property developers, such as our host today, who have launched at least 4 energy-efficient projects, such as the Olivia, Kaya, Solaris Park, that are all certified green from that perspective. I do hope that more developers will continue with deep optimism. In terms of things that I'm a bit hopeful of and a bit less optimistic about, is that there are a lot of old buildings in the city, and all these old buildings have already, the carbon have been spent, the footprint is already there. I do wish that more resources can be plowed back to gentrify and rejuvenate these old buildings into affordable housing, rental housing, for example, to accommodate the shift in mindset, so that there'll be a lot less wastage and resources can be put into very good use in key urban areas. That's my piece. Thank you.
Thanks. We have to get the message over to a particular GLIC who just moved into a very tall 118-floor tower. Okay, so now, actually, can I come back to you, Samuel? Because you gave your views earlier on the positive part, and you mentioned you want to talk more about the risks. Why don't you share more about the risks?
Now, when it comes to the numbers on real estate, the numbers are very positive. Just let me give you some. In the property sector, total transaction volume has year on year grown by 17.2% on the total transaction volume in 2023 vis-a-vis the previous year. And also by value, it gone up by about 34.3%. Now, this improvement can be seen across all sectors, and this is something very good. Now, the Malaysian House Price Index saw a healthy moderation with both index and average price drop slightly. Now, this is not bad news. Prices moderating, index moderating means become more affordable. I'll give an example. Q4 of 2023, the index was 221.2, and Q1 of 2024 was 216.9. Average price, 477,600 in Q4, and it dropped to about 467,997. Yeah, a lot, 6 points, a congruence of 6 points, which caused real estate to grow this way. The first is the pent-up demand post-COVID. Now, during COVID, 3 years, people were not able to go out to look at property, and Malaysians, like all other people, they like to touch and feel before they commit to big tickets purchase. So post-COVID, people were able to go around, and this has increased the purchase and transaction volume. The reopening of the international border, especially for Johor, has seen a lot of people coming from Singapore, Indonesia, coming over the Two Causeway and buying property. These are not just Singaporean, but a lot of them are actually Malaysian working in Singapore. The third factor is, of course, the healthy economic growth. Now, Johor economic growth has always been about 1% higher than the national average. So Johor has seen very positive growth driver over the last decades. And this has brought up a lot of confidence for people to invest in property in Johor. We know cost has gone up. Earlier on, we heard about costs, compliance costs about 20%. We heard about land costs, labor costs, material costs, all going up. Now, how to hedge against inflation? Property, real estate is the best asset class to hedge against inflation. And of course, in Johor, we heard many announcements of catalytic projects, like the RTS, which should be operational by end of 2026. We have a special economic zone, special financial zone, and possibly even the high-speed rerunning, because the paper will be tabled by the end of this year. When all this happens, there will be another booster to the Johor economy. And lastly, is the emergence of more affordable houses. I mentioned earlier on the index has gone down, the average price has gone down, and the state government has made effort to ensure that affordable houses are made available to all rakyat, especially the B40 and the M40. And all this coming together make the real estate market in Johor and Malaysia a healthy and more robust one.
Thank you very much for that. We'll come back to that because Johor, I mean, there's a whole session on Johor later, and certainly for our hosts, UAM Sunrise, Johor is also very important. But so I do want to come back to the Johor point later. But now let me go to Puan Norani. So there is a question here actually, and I'm hoping to merge it with one of the questions that we had as well, which is to talk about the REIT market, right? So given Malaysia's competitive REIT yields compared to regional markets like Singapore and Hong Kong, how does our real estate market stack up in terms of overall attractiveness and investment potential? And you know, like you talk about some of these things about industrial, education, healthcare, and so on. So what else could we really enhance Malaysia's standing as a preferred destination for real estate investments? And so at this point, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking more on the supply side. At some point, we should go to the demand side and then talk about affordability and whether people can buy and so on. But I think for now, because the other question is also talking about key strategies Malaysia should adopt to stay competitive. So I think we can put these in. Yeah.
Thank you, Nick. If we look at the REITs, if we compare our REITs, Malaysian REITs and Singapore REITs, I think both are equally attractive. I think the dividend distribution is about 6% to 7% for both Malaysian REIT and Singapore REIT. And in terms of the price to book value, it's about 0.7 to 0.8. In comparison to Hong Kong REITs, the price to book value is 0.3. It's only at 0.3. There's a lot more room to grow. But then again, we look at the property yield, it's only about 3% to 5% in Hong Kong. So actually, whether one market to another, they are more attractive, it's actually dependent on the investors' risk appetite. Are they looking at dividend yield play, or are they looking at capital gain? That is a bit of comparison on the REITs between Malaysia, Singapore, and Hong Kong. And if we look at how can we make Malaysia more attractive for capital to come in real estate sector? I think existingly, Malaysia, the environment for foreign investment is already welcoming. And our regulatory framework, I think, is also good. In terms of investment for the investors, there is protection. And also there is very limited restriction to foreign ownerships or foreign acquisition of assets in Malaysia. What we can do more to top existing features that we have, which are already attractive, is I think where the government is driving the sustainability initiatives. So under these initiatives, government would help even the foreign investors or even the domestic investors where it's suitable and where it can. And also the other thing is on the, we as a stakeholder of the industry, we should be promoting our market to foreign investors. We should tell them there are opportunities in Malaysia. There are also strategic partnership opportunities, but at the same time, we have to address what are their concerns. Are there concerns from the regulatory framework, or are there concerns on the regulatory requirements? So I think if we can promote this awareness to foreign investors, we'll be able to attract them better to our country.
Okay, thank you. Next, so Simeng. So you earlier you talked about some of the the sustainability bits which you were very disappointed to see was fifth. I have to admit I didn't vote that when I voted that. I did the macro stuff, but then again I'm an economist, so I would tend to do that. But so the question for you, right? So we're talking still at least in this part about Malaysia as an attractive place for real estate investments, and Bursa of course is a big part of this. So the last IPO for a real estate company in Malaysia was Radium, which was listed last year. From a policy development perspective then, how does Bursa Malaysia collaborate with regulatory bodies to enhance the investment climate for real estate and then facilitate IPOs? Because ultimately, we do want a way to exit, to be able to cash in and so on. And so what are your strategies to boost the attractiveness in that particular perspective?
Yeah, sure. I think the property development space is not a space like instant noodles where you just buy a pack and add water and decide to go into business and your IPO going forward from that standpoint. At Bursa, we have taken a very proactive approach to business nowadays. We have the regular, what I call the strategic business where we will go out outwardly to look for opportunities and companies to come on board. But more importantly, it's a new tactical approach that we're taking at Bursa where we are increasingly research and data-driven. Well, why I'm excited or why Bursa is excited about the forum today is because with some of the government push, let's say down south, for example, on the places like Khazanah, the Nusajaya, where there's a high concentration of data center industrial parks from that standpoint. So what we try to advocate is we try to understand what are the components, like the Lego pieces that were shown with Sofian's presentation. What are the components and what are the building blocks that would make a successful, sustainable business model in Malaysia? I mean, if you ask the Googles of the world, the Nvidias of the world, do they want to plunk in mega bucks to actually own a piece of real estate here? What they're keen on is technically the O&M part and the business part. So at Bursa, we do see a lot of opportunities in this space where it would sit perfectly with Norani's business, where we see there are a lot of opportunities to have a mega data center REIT, where we can technically facilitate the thought process, bring in the stakeholders like UEM, for example, the Googles of the world, where each of us would have a different play. Bursa will be the conduit for capital to fund the initiatives, whereas the developers can have alternative business of creating a high value and green, if possible, with the emergence of green energy supply. Because the Amazons of the world, the Googles of the world will want a carbon neutral type footprint. So we can facilitate in the sense of ideating to the correct channels of the government to promote this as a national agenda and initiative so that everyone can benefit and the business can be sustainable from that standpoint. What we regularly do is we are regularly part of working groups with the regulators and key stakeholders, including the GLICs, to see how we can ideate ideas that can transform into policies that can be implemented. Then the end game plan that Bursa will play is to facilitate the flow of capital. I mean, earlier we were talking about FDI and DDI. On both sides, the domestic capital through the Gear Up program run by the GLICs can actually invest, and we, through the government machineries like MDEC, MITI, through the Invest Malaysia roadshows, can also enhance capital in to promote this particular sector. The important thing is, translate imagination into something that is applicable.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to turn to the questions a little bit because there are some very popular questions here, getting votes. But maybe, Norani, actually, I just want to come back to you a little bit, right? And actually then maybe one more round, because the point on data centers you raised is actually quite relevant. and then I'll actually come to you also, Samuel, because Johor is seeing a lot of that, right? But maybe Norani first, right? When we, I think when Meng brought up the point about things like Giap or other Malaysian companies trying to do more stuff here, and whether or not some of these, because earlier you mentioned the parts that you're optimistic about, like healthcare, education, things like that. I noticed you didn't quite mention data centers. So maybe you can share your view on that. Why did you not mention data centers? And what is the worry, if we see too much capital influx into some of these parts where we kind of know why some of them come in, and to what extent should we roll out the red carpet for them versus, hey, can we save our bullets for something else?
I think, Nick, I did mention data centers. I actually mentioned the darlings of the real estate sector right now are the industrial, logistic, and data centers. So yeah, I'm optimistic about data center. And in fact, we, PHP, as an property investment company, we are looking for opportunities. So if there are developers of data centers here, I think I'll be available after the session at the corner there or at the back there. So yeah, we are keen to invest in data centers. And I think you also talk about the healthcare and education. It's not exactly rolling out the red carpet for them, but we do see, because these are growth sectors, we do see the foreign investments coming in to invest. But right now, when they invest, they're actually investing in the businesses first, because they're leaving the parts of the real estate component of those businesses, which is good for us, the domestic players, the developers, and the investors. But I think eventually, if the growth is good and if they are more confident, familiar with the real estate requirements or real estate situation in Malaysia, I think they would also eventually invest in the real estate component.
Okay. So, Samuel, so I want to stay on data centers for a while because I guess Iskandar might cover some of this later as well. So Johor, we know, is being on the receiving end of a lot of these, quite deliberately as well. So how do you think they will really impact the real estate landscape in Johor? And maybe if you can give a view on whether or not we, on actually the value of data centers as well for the Johor economy, beyond just, of course, the real estate side.
Yeah, let me touch on the first issue. Now, Mr. Lee has mentioned very well, from 2014 onward, the property market actually peaked in Johor, and the same thing will probably happen in whole Malaysia. And then after 2014, the whole market then started to flatten out. And the green shoot actually started to be seen in the year 2022. Now, if you look at the normal property cycle, which takes about 10 to 12 years, 5 to 6 years would be good years, and 5 to 6 years would be slump or slow down. Now, taking 2022 as the peak of the market, or the starting of the uptick of the market, then we should see the market peaking by the year 2027, 28. Now, this will also coincide with the operation of the RTS, the maturity of the SEZ, and also SFZ. And all these things are coming in place, and I believe if this growth pattern prevails, then surely we can see another 4 to 5 years of growth in the real estate market in Johor. Now, the other thing which I want to talk about is the take-up rate for landed residential has been rather good, very high. In fact, developer has been so innovative. Instead of building 2-story, 3-story terrace houses, today developers are building 1-story terrace houses, and people have to queue up overnight. Even the Bumi Putra lots are taken. Now, this is a very creative way to overcome overhang and to meet the actual requirements of the people. And the prices are not cheap. You're talking about a single-story terrace house selling for about 650,000 and above, almost like a double-story terrace house. High-rises. Now, of course, the buzzword about high-rises is the overhang in Johor Bahru or Johor. But in actual fact, if you look into the hardcore overhang, it's only about 16,000. And these are actually concentrated in areas which should not even be built with high-rises in the first place. But high-rises in what I call the RTS zone are actually very well received. Now, today, the prices of the service apartment in R&F is as high as 2,000 ringgit per square foot. It used to be about 700 to 800. Now, you see that the demand for high-rises are good. How about high-rises in the outside RKS zone? In good suburb area, similarly, we can see a very good take-up. We can see this in Taman Johor Jaya, which was launched. Even before the official launch, almost all the units, non-booming units, were taken up. So in good location, right products, right pricing, high-rises will be well taken. Now, the darling, as Puan has mentioned, is the industrial sector. Even as I speak, this morning there was a requirement for industrial park, about 80 to 100 acres. So a lot of investors are coming in because they see Johor as a destination for more industrial park moving forward, because more people are coming in, not just of Singapore, China, but even the DDIs are happening in Johor. Now back to your data center story. Data center story has been hyped up quite a fair bit, Johor being the major player. Now, apart from consuming a lot of energy and power and water, what other advantages can we see? I can see, number one is the branding. If I have an industrial park and I have one data center, it only showcase to the people that my industrial park has sufficient power, sufficient water to cater to their needs. So the issue of branding and prestige will come in. The ones who benefit will, of course, the landowner, the contractors, and the logistic players. But we hope, apart from this, there'll be other spin-off effect. For example, the data centers can have their data centers academy, training people to upskill them. There can be also some other high-end E&E to complement the data center. Any AI-driven and related factory or industry should be encouraged so that data center will not just be data center. If you read the recent report by MIDA for last month, you notice that semiconductor industry is picking up, and more of this will be under construction by the second half of 2024. So this is something we are looking forward.
Okay, so basically, if I understand you correctly, not all data centers are the same. Let's be a bit more clever as a country about actually how we try to invest in data centers here. So that especially when we take foreign capital who maybe just want to be here for cheap energy and cheap land and subsidize everything else, if we can be smarter about the kind of data centers, that'll be good. Okay. So now I want to go to, because you are a property consultant, you are CIO of a thing. I want to go to someone technically a bit more neutral on this last question, right? Because the oversupply thing that we talked about still remains a thing. I think earlier we had some, we talked about in the previous panel, also in the first speech, where we do see still an oversupply issue in many spots in the country. And you just mentioned Johor, the parts that shouldn't have been but are oversupplied. Maybe to get your view from Bursa perspective, what can we really do about any of these things? And maybe is it going to be part of some kind of regulation that you work with whoever in the future to think about when you invest, how are you investing responsibly such that it doesn't just benefit, let's say, foreign investors who buy a bunch of stuff here but actually don't live here and don't actually spend money in the economy and so on?
From an equity perspective or in real estate?
Whichever you like.
Okay, the real estate part is technically not from a Bursa perspective, from a personal perspective. I mean, my past life, I was fairly active in the property sector from that standpoint. Now, it's always a tricky bit. It's because the foreign investors are likely to buy higher value real estate. And then that deprives the bandwidth of developers, because developers have only finite resources and finite bandwidth, workers, and finite patience to talk to authorities for development plans. And if there's an increase in demand in the higher end properties, that usually translates to higher margins, which then would deprive the masses, the B40s and the M40s from affordable housing, let's say 500,000 and below. So this is something that we need to balance. But I believe the government has been putting the right policies in place to make sure that the masses get housed. For example, the means to housing. Well, what do we really look at the end of the day? Can I afford a house? Generally, you would either rent a house or based on your income pay, you would then look at getting a loan. with there's a government program where it enables the individual to actually borrow 100% for housing loans. That would then create a supply for affordable housing from 500,000 below, for example. What we need to be cognizant of is we can't be too fierce or so to turn away foreign investment, especially in the real estate sector, because that is what drives the Dow. So from, let's say, Bursa's standpoint, what we can help to do is, I mentioned earlier that we have this tactical approach to ideating ideas and originating future IPOs so that not only we can benefit as investors, the entire market can benefit, and the optics of Malaysia locally and abroad will be more vibrant. If what we hope to do is we hope to be able to aggregate and ideate ideas where we can provide aspiring developers and the companies that are looking to get into this sector to go on a path to IPO, where we can guide you in terms of what the requirements are, because going public is a big thing. It's about proper governance, proper management in place, having the proper disclosure and transparency measures. So with all those things in place, investors are becoming a lot discerning now. You see, especially the younger ones. The younger ones are behaving like full-time fund managers, where they not only look at the numbers that you profess, they also look at what's your story, what's your game plan, what's your carbon footprint, for example. So with all those things in mind, for all the aspiring future real estate players out there, Bursa has a platform for you to come to us where we'll be able to facilitate and help translate your ideas into reality through a road to IPO type of path. I think with that way, we can tie in both the foreign investors in, the local property space, both the high-end, low-end, and mid-market, plus promote vibrancy for the market.
Okay, thank you very much. We have 6 minutes and 50 seconds left. So I'm going to go through the questions. The first question, the top voter question with 19 votes, I'm going to Tai Chi because there's a whole session on Iskandar after this. Question, I'll just read it out so that the next moderator knows that they have to answer this. The question says, and person wrote it, very well. Third time lucky, I have seen the evolution of Renong's Johor development, the Iskandar dream, and now Johor Singapore SEZ. What are we doing differently to get it right this time? So whoever's next, just take note. Okay, so the next highest question here with 17 votes. So we did. So Siming did talk a little bit about the issue of overhung properties. So we'll get into this because question is, what can the property developers do to address the issue of overhung properties? So that's one. We talked about while working on. Sorry, the thing moved. While working on pushing for new innovative products. So the first part, you got all this overhang of supply, but the second is you still want to move to have new innovative products. What can developers do? Yeah. By the way, you shouldn't feel obligated to answer these questions. If you have a view, just share. If not, it's okay. Yeah.
One of the proposals I've given to the Johor State government to clear the overhang is that if the overhang properties remain overhang for too long, overhang means they are unsold after 9 months of launch, then this building the design becomes obsolete. Now, when new buildings come up, then obviously they will choose the newer building, and this becomes hardcore overhang. Then it will be very difficult to clear them. Now, one of the suggestions I gave to the state government, PKPJ, was that to hold a carnival, a big carnival for all those unsold unit and overhang unit, where incentives can then be given, right? The bankers, the government authorities, the lawyers, and all this will be lined up in the same hall. Approval can be given on the spot. Now, this is one way to do it. This was done many years back where carnival was done for Bumi Putra and affordable houses. And within that weekend itself, thousands of units were sold. So we can have regular carnival like this all over Johor just to clear the overhang. Now, policies must be made to prevent this from happening because market studies, independent market studies must be done. I have done many market studies, but most of the time clients will come with me with a preconceived or predetermined decision. Please say yes to my proposal. Now, there was a case where a government-linked company came to me with a proposal, and the plot ratio was 1:17 in Johor Bahru. Now, the obvious answer to this is no, don't buy. And they did not buy. And for that, I met the CEO last week, and he said, I was so thankful I did not have to oblige to buy this piece of land, which is totally unthinkable. So independent market study must be carried out, and you must give the leeway to the consultant to have their say. Thank you.
Nick, I have an alternative perspective to the problem. You know, we've been talking about paradigm shift earlier in the previous panel about moving away from home ownership to rental housing. If you look at the European community, bulk of the people there rent. I mean, that's the real paradigm. Australia as well. What can happen is perhaps, as you know, property development business can be quite lumpy over the years, and that would definitely impact your share price if you're listed. What we may want is we may want to introduce an alternative income stream to the property developers to iron out the lumpiness. Perhaps for the overhang units can be converted to either rental housing or rental housing with an exit such as rent-to-own programs. Now, there's no harm in running a rental housing program to iron out lumpiness, is because if you come to Bursa, you can always do a secondary issuance, rights issue or private placement to actually fund and take out the project finance for the overhang units. And over time, you can also build a robust business once you understand the dynamics and then translate that into a rental housing REIT, for example, and it will be the first in the country, not only for the sponsoring developer, but also from Bursa. And that can potentially be replicable and it's sustainable as well. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks. Do you have any views?
Yeah, I would like to add to Meng. I think what he mentioned is about the growth of the mega trend, which is yet to reach Malaysian shore. In Tokyo, in New York, in London, people can't afford to buy the houses or the flats. They're all renting. And institutional investors are going into this sector where they actually own the block of residential and they get one good operator to actually let out the space to whoever they'll be interested. So I think this is one of the things that we should consider as a stakeholder here, where some of the older buildings in KL should actually be converted to residential, because the locations, sometimes they are so close to MRT station, LRT station, but because they were built 20 years ago, they're no longer attractive. Of course, there is an option to retrofit, to make it sustainable and all that. But I think we should also consider the change of use. And I think this, if the participation of the government where it's appropriate can also be given some grant if this, if this to be materialized by some of the developers.
So it is a regulatory issue. First, we have to change the use. Second, maybe some government support. But third, then we need either the current landlords or the current owners to actually want to do it or invest in it in the first place, or at least sell it to somebody who will want to do it. What is the main barrier in your view? Why it isn't happening?
I think one is the capital. And also we know that when you want to change something, it's subject to planning, and there's also takes time. Sometimes you cannot have your capital lying idle and waiting for things to change, things to come. So sometimes that's why most developers which actually build new ones at new locations.
Because I do really like the idea of repurposing some of the downtown KL buildings. I guess I'm just curious what the main effects are. Anyway, we have like 10 seconds left, so I'll just say, please join me in thanking our panelists here today. I hope that we've taken something away from this. So thank you very much, everybody.